Hello there YouTube, I'm back with a review of my Steelseries Merc Stealth keyboard. I'm sorry it's taken me so long in order to do this, but first off want to give a big shout out to Positron, who's got me off my fat ass to finally do a review of this. I'll be covering several of my opinions in this about the keyboard layout, the software that I have, and other problems that I've encountered in the year that I've been using this. Now, I'll get right along with the gaming keypad, which is the prominent feature of this keyboard. Now, the design of this keyboard I absolutely love as far as this gaming pad is, but there's one inherent flaw that really does tick me off, is that the Z key and the X key don't exist over on the keypad. And because this is primarily a first-person shooter keyboard, in a lot of first-person shooters, the Z key and the X key become very useful. Left 4 Dead, for example, you use this as your voice radical for commanding your different players around. Other games also use Z and X, but in a less priority. So that was one flaw that I found with this, but the pros definitely outweigh the cons as far on the keyboard of this, on the gaming pad. For one thing, it really does save a lot of strain on one's wrist. Now, a lot of you hardcore gamers out there, and I don't know how many of you will actually watch this, find that your wrist goes on a certain angle, and if you're a hardcore gamer or you like to go to LANs, you'll find a long period of time in which you'll have your fingers on the WASD keys. Now, I always have my fingers on A, W, D, and I have it in a comfortable position as I can, but if you notice, the wrist is on this long angle, and after a long period of gaming, hours and hours, you find that your wrist starts to hurt. But with this gaming pad, everything is where it is supposed to be naturally, and you have very little wrist movement needed in order to access every key that is available here, and it saves a lot of strain on one's wrist. Now, another positive that I've just remembered about is the number keys along here. They're all readily available, and you don't need to go all over your keyboard in order to access. But that being said, there is one key which is not available up here. Now, if you'll notice, with this keypad on the gaming pad, it goes up to 11, and then it's obviously 0 and then the minus key, but it doesn't have room for a 12th key, which is the plus key. And for some games, plus key can come in handy. StarCraft 2 will use it, and various other games. But I mean, if you're using this gaming keyboard for any other game other than a first-person shooter, or if you use it for an RPG, I mean, you really shouldn't be using this keyboard for RPGs. There's got Steelseries have developed their own keyboards for the MMOs, such as World of Warcraft and other games such as that. So yeah, all in all, I really do love this gaming pad. Everything is where it's supposed to be naturally, as I've already said. But yeah, the Z and X keys are really do need to be here. That could be a design fault because of the way that your wrists or your hand sits. I mean, this is really unused here. I mean, but it can still be utilized here because my fingers are never really resting down on this part here. Not really. So I'll move along to something else. I've been bragging about that for a long time. Now, with the row of keys right here, this is generally quick options for playing one's music, skipping, going back, mute feature, stopping, volume up and down. But this key right here is a Z key, which is already pre-programmed for the program which you can download from the website, which I mentioned in my previous unboxing as spam. This is where you actually get the drivers for the program. I won't be going into too much depth with the program because, as Positron has stated on my unboxing, is that he really does hate it, and I do too. It is such a pain to organize keys. Now, these three keys here, Roman numerals 1, 2, and 3, they're supposed to be hotkeys that you can program for any function. I've had great difficulty in trying to program these. For some reason, I just couldn't get my head around the programming feature inside the Z board exe, which controls the mapping layout for this. So I had great difficulty in customizing these, and so I've just left them alone. Now, but I have been able to reprogram some of these keys along here. For example, the Z key is no longer the base program, it is now the Windows Media Player. Now, volume up and down is still the same. I've taken mute off because I never use mute because, you know, in the middle of a game you don't want to be hitting mute. It'll ruin your gameplay, as everyone would already know. I've changed that into the Z board keys. I just did it as a feature so I didn't mishit. Play key and stop key, forward and rewind, I've kept the same. But now I'll move on to the keyboard features with these last two buttons here that you can see. It controls the color and the brightness of the color. Now, there's only three colors that this board has: red, blue, and purple. Purple isn't really that great. I see it as a kind of the red and blue all together. Now, one problem I found, this bit here, nice and purple, gaming keypad is more of a blue than an actual purple. And I don't know if you can actually see the difference. I mean, it is kind of purple, but there's more blue shining through than red. And I use blue because it's more brighter on this screen. And if you use the dimmer, you've got off entirely, first setting, second and third, and it will cycle through if you so wish. I like it red, and that's just my own personal preference. This keyboard is actually rather chunky. Now, it doesn't have a low profile. My previous keyboard before this was a Razer Lycosa, and that is a very thin keyboard. The keyboard on the Lycosa is around about an inch long. Not even that, it's more or less 3/4 of an inch. But this one here sits more than an inch, about an inch and an eighth. And this with the actual keyboard entirely and the keys included. For those of you using the metric system, it's close to 3 centimeters. Other things I never included in my unboxing is these stands. There's actually 2 levels of stands which give you in this. You have a high profile and the lower profile. Right here, I always prefer low profile because it doesn't hurt my fingers so much. Because if you have your keyboard on a raised platform all the time, there's more strain put on your wrists in an elevated position than there is like that, and so I want to try and avoid any kind of RSI or arthritis in later life. So it's a very useful feature for hardcore gamers that want to try and look after their wrists as far as RSI is concerned. Another con to this, although pro at the same time, is these 2 USB slots here. Now, there's only one USB which plugs into the back of your computer, and it's kind of like a piggyback on that. And I've always had problems with USB hubs and such like that with losing their sync for with devices with high demand. For example, my headphones, which I use for gaming, the Logitech G35s. I can't use these with the hub. This is really only for secondary things that you never really need. I wouldn't put a hard drive on them. You don't want to lose any data or have your external hard drive become corrupt. And so I avoid any kind of essential items on this. I'll use flash drives on them just for the ease of access, and that's really the only purpose. So we really don't need 2 here for that. We really only need 1. Now, if you notice, it's got the indent here. for most USB drives, you don't really have an issue with that. I mean, I've got a Corsair Flash Voyager, and it fits in ever so nicely. It'll go in no worries. Just like so, and it syncs up no worries. Now, I've got a kind of a this Jim Raynor StarCraft 2 Collector's Edition USB flash drive. Now, the problem is with this is that it's chunky, and it will never ever be able to fit into this. There is just too much in the way. So as far as this keyboard is concerned, it's a design flaw. These USBs could have been pushed out a bit more so that you can have more options. And for those of you who like using your collector's edition USB flash drives, especially with Diablo 3 coming out, there's going to be a Soulstone USB flash come out, and that might be an issue for this. But time will only tell on that. Now, moving on to the major problem which I've stated in my posts in the unboxing video. The major problem which I experienced with this is my motherboard was a Gigabyte GAX58A UD7 motherboard. Now, for some reason, only with that motherboard, there was an issue with this keyboard being plugged in. When you go to turn it on, it would create an infinite boot loop. It would get past your post where it checks your RAM, your CPU, and all your hard drives, and it'll go through and check your into the next process, and then it would just reboot again and do it again and again and again. And only when I figured out that unplugged the keyboard did it would actually boot. The problem with that, I mean, I fixed it now, but you had to do a firmware or a BIOS flash in order to correct that issue. Now, it so happens that I had also bought a new CPU, which was not actually covered by the BIOS, and so I had to do a BIOS flash anyway. So I killed two birds with one stone with that. But some of you out there who don't know how to do your BIOS flash with this specific motherboard, or you've probably already found out how to do it, but that was one major issue that I had with this board, and I nearly stopped using it entirely. Now, I'll finish off with a conclusion. Using this keyboard, first integrating from a standard keyboard to this gaming keyboard, it took a while, but everything's become so natural now that I don't even need to look at the keys. And I have a strong suspicion that going back after this keyboard to something that's entirely different, or going back to the standard, is going to be a serious issue for me because I'm so used to this. Oh, very quickly, this side of the keyboard has been compressed. There's no longer individual arrow keys, which is separate, as you can already see. It's all been mashed. Now, I used to work in retail, and where I used to memorize the button keys, and I could get to a point where I don't even need to look to punch in a number really quick. When I've got a 20-digit number, it's just a slap, 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 and it was done. The problem with it is that the 0 key is no longer as large as it used to be on your standard keyboard. It's now small as hell, and I'm forever pushing this up arrow just as a force of habit. And so that is one negative feature about this. Now, also looking at this, there's also dual feature with this keyboard. It's got your number lock, your scroll lock, pause, show desktop, paste, copy, delete, insert, all of those things that you usually find in that little small section are now integrated. And in order to do that, you need to take your number lock off, and then you can access your delete button. Like, say, for example, you want to do a Control-Alt-Delete to get to your task manager. You need to take num lock off in order to access the delete key. Otherwise, it just counts as a Control-Alt-1, which is the delete key on this. So that's, I mean, you get used to it after a while, but it is a bit annoying as far as standard keyboards are concerned. So I think that's about it. I mean, all in all, I love this keyboard, and I'm sorry for the rant, but you guys wanted to know how I felt about this keyboard. I love it, but I dislike the gaming software that came with it. So I hope that you find this enlightening, and that it was more informative than my previous unboxing, and I hope to see you all again next time.